friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Dasha and today is going to be, I think, the first video of Bookmas, first or second, and I'm really excited. I did Bookmas last year on my channel, basically just a ton of wrapping up the end of the year, getting ready for the new year kind of videos, and I loved it, so I'm definitely doing it again. Expect videos from me every few days, just kind of talking about best and worst books, things that are kind of Christmassy, things that are preparing for the next year of reading, like goals, all things like stats, awards, tags, all that fun stuff. Today's video specifically is going to be a new one that I didn't do last year. I'm going to be talking about all the books I DNF'd this year, because there were actually more than I thought. If you are watching this not the day it was posted, I will create a playlist with all of the Bookmas videos so you can binge and kind of see my year in review. If you are watching this the day of, hi, can you believe it's already the beginning of December? I'm blown away. This year went by freakishly fast. And somehow I managed to DNF, I think, 6 books. I guess I should also preface this by saying that I'm a huge fan of DNFing books. I think if reading is a hobby, why sit through something that you're just 100% not enjoying? So that's why I have a fair amount of DNFs in terms of I think comparatively to how much I've read over the year, because I've read at this point that I'm filming about 73, 74 books, and I've DNF'd 6. So it's a solid amount. And I think it's a fair amount considering there's no way I'm gonna like everything I read, so I just DNF it, early enough so that I don't waste my time. Some of them I wasted a fair amount of time on, but it is what it is. Also, if any of these are worth trying again, I'm very susceptible to peer pressure, as I've mentioned before. Let me know, or if you've DNF'd some of these, or if there are books that you DNF'd that everyone loves, let me know because I'm nosy. I'm gonna go in order of when I read them. So we're gonna start with The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is an adult fantasy. It is a medieval Russian setting and there's a little bit of folklore involved. And I was so damn excited for this. I bought this book, I owned it, and I read it physically because I thought for sure that it was gonna be a new favorite and I was gonna be able to annotate it and just love it, but it ended up not being for me. I think the main reason I DNF'd was because I was bored out of my mind. I don't tend to read historical fiction, and this was more historical fiction than fantasy at the beginning especially. I'm sure it gets more fantastical, but every time I looked at it, I did not want to pick it up, and to me that's such a huge sign of you should DNF this book if I just don't even want to go back and pick it up. And I can just tell at that point that it's not really going to be worth my time, which sucks because I'm sure it was overall worth my time, but I couldn't push myself through it. I don't know if it would have been worth it. All right, I believe the next book that I DNF'd was actually Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now this one took me forever to decide to DNF. What happened was I read it, and then at some point I put it down and I did not pick it back up. And enough time had elapsed to the point where I realized that I just didn't care. I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with it, and it's not that it's because it's a classic, it's not for me. You guys know that I tend to enjoy classics for the most part. It's not an issue with the genre, it's more an issue with the story. I mentioned this in I think the wrap-up where I talked about this, but there was one Goodreads review that said that this book is a 1-star because it's just a bunch of rich people going to each other's houses, and honestly that's exactly it, and I just didn't care. I understand that this book is kind of a battle of the wills between Mr. Darcy and I don't even remember the female protagonist's name. I also never watched the movie, so when it came down to it, it's not like I had any kind of emotional attachment to the story. I will watch the movie, the 2005 adaptation. I still would like to because I know it's absolutely beloved, but the story did not particularly grip me when it came to the writing. I understand that Jane Austen has a lot of wit and humor and intelligence that she injects into her writing, but for me it was just, holy shit, I couldn't do it. I could not do it. So that one has been officially DNF'd. I don't think I've said that on the channel yet, but it's done. My next DNF was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir. So that is the 3rd book in the An Ember in the Ashes Quartet, young adult fantasy series, where you are following 2 people mainly from this ancient Roman-inspired empire. One of them was dressing up as a slave to infiltrate the military academy, and the other one is actually at this military academy but wants to maybe defect. And I liked the first two books well enough. I thought that there was some interesting things happening with the magic that could have taken a really cool route, and there was some very kind of fairy tale folklore vibes that I was kind of enjoying from the way that the stories were being told. But by the time I got to the third book, I just could not bring myself to care anymore. As soon as the third book started, A Reaper at the Gates, I realized that it felt very much like a rewrite of the second book, just with slightly different plot elements, locations, and people involved. And that's when I was like, I can't do this a third time and then go into a fourth book. I cannot bring myself to care. I thought that what had happened in the first two books, especially the first book's plot was actually really, really well done. I could not bring myself to care. Characters kept putting themselves in situations that we know as readers that they are too intelligent to put themselves into, so it just got really frustrating to read. The other thing that makes this funny is that I was buddy reading this with Nat from Nerdy Nat Reads. We buddy read the whole quartet, or we planned to, and then both of us, as we got to pretty much the exact same spot in the third book, in A Reaper at the Gates, we both just messaged each other and we were like, damn, I kind of don't care anymore. So it was just nice to get that kind of validation that like, it's not just me. There was just something about it that it just lost interest. Maybe the story was better served as a trilogy. It might have been a bit more, maybe the books might have been a little bit longer, but it could have been more concise in terms of the plotting. And the character decisions might have made more sense, because it felt like a lot of the times the character decisions served the plot rather than the plot moving along with appropriate character decisions. So that was one I'm actually like not sad to have put down. I didn't really have like exceptionally high hopes for it, but I definitely wanted to like it because I liked the first book well enough, but I don't have the time or energy for that anymore. So the next book I DNF'd was actually, I think, in the same month. It is Hotel Scarface by Robin Farzad. And I used to have like a lot of these books, actually. I've gotten rid of most of them. If you're interested, I sell a lot of the books that I unhaul on Depop, which is linked below if you guys want to check that out, especially if you're Canadian. I don't know if I can actually ship to the US through Depop, but I do sell them because I need to get them out of my house, especially if I DNF them. So I got rid of Hotel Scarface almost immediately after I DNF'd it, which was only about 100 or so pages in. And the reason I DNF'd this was because it got extremely predictable. So this is a nonfiction book about this hotel. I think it's called The Mutiny. It's a hotel in Miami that was really, really popular during the 70s or 80s. I can't remember. But essentially a bunch of famous people, politicians, and drug lords went there and partied and sold cocaine and mingled and developed these connections between one another. And the hotel eventually went on to, the story of the hotel and the people that went there went on to inspire Scarface, which is a beloved, beloved movie. So even though I haven't watched the movie, I thought it'd be interesting to read the book to see the real history behind it, because often I find fact is stranger than fiction. And unfortunately, this got extremely repetitive, and you would think that stories about extremely wealthy people and drug lords would not get boring, but goddamn, it really did. There's only so much you can read about people who have excessive wealth and what they do with it, and how terrible of people they are, and how much women they fuck, and how much drugs they snort. It gets a little repetitive, I'm sorry. And by no means is it a bad book. It is extremely well researched. It's pretty entertaining and easy to read. It's just not enjoyable in my opinion. I thought that there was like just a lot of names being dropped and you kind of bounced around between them. So you would mention someone tangentially related to someone else and then go down a wormhole of them, but you'd abandon the other story, and then you'd kind of bring that person back up in like just a paragraph that was related to some crazy thing someone else did, and it just kind of got confusing. And I just realized 100 pages in that like I've read enough. I don't care to read more. However, I find this time period in general pretty interesting, and I did see related to this on Goodreads another book about the general political and social climate in Miami at that time, because apparently there was a lot of issues with race, immigration, and politics at the time that were happening as well, and I feel like that'd be a lot more interesting to read about rather than just like rich people buying monkeys and fucking bitches. And then we just got 2 more books to go. So this one I think I talked about in my October wrap-up / November TBR, because I didn't read a lot in October, and this honestly didn't help. The Good Daughter by, I was gonna call her Gillian Flynn. Damn it. Karen Slaughter. Gillian Flynn blurbs it, which is why I got a little confused. This is a mystery thriller. Two sisters, when they are teenagers, are forced into the woods at gunpoint. One runs away, the other stays, and then you're following one of them later on in life. And while you're following her, there's another tragedy that strikes their small town, and it's kind of bringing all these old feelings back up. And I talked about this one recently, so I'll keep it kind of brief because my thoughts obviously haven't changed since it was recent. This was just excessive in its descriptions of violence, and I know that's really rich coming from me because I love horror and I love thrillers, and even a lot of fantasy has gore, but this was excessive to a point that I just could not get behind. It just wasn't enjoyable. Basically what happened is, like I mentioned, there were two sisters forced into the woods at gunpoint. So in the beginning, you get the story of what happened that night up until the point where one runs away and the other is left behind, and you kind of stop it there and head into the present day timeline, which is fine. That scene is so friggin' detailed. You get the home invasion, you get the two grown men harassing these two girls, and they make them feel super uncomfortable. They're making all these lewd comments towards them because one of them was already convicted for raping like a 16-year-old. And so you just feel extremely uncomfortable. There's a lot of gore because like shit goes down, and then you're just getting all of these moments in excruciating detail, which, okay, fair enough, I'll read that, I don't mind. It sets the tone, it sets the scene. Then halfway through the book, you get the other sister's perspective of that night, and you're sitting there and you're like, we just saw all of this through one sister's eyes. There is absolutely no need to see it again. The way that the violence just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and then on top of that, the second perspective, like the second time you go through that scene is through the younger sister's eyes, who is like friggin' 13 or something, or could be younger, I'm not sure. And she's getting all these like inappropriate comments made towards her, and she's scared out of her mind because she's a freaking child. And it's just like, I was not enjoying reading it. Like, it was a little much for me, and I can handle a lot. At the beginning, I didn't mind the scene at all. It really, like I said, set the tone for the book. But when you just repeatedly harp on and focus on the violence, it just felt either like you were trying to stuff the book and make it a little bit longer because you didn't have enough, because what is the point of having the exact same scene twice? Or you were just trying to, I don't know, romanticize the violence on your female characters, which is a critique I've seen leveled against Karen Slaughter a lot. There is just gratuitous violence against her female characters, and I almost kind of got that, to be honest. I don't know. Overall, I would try Karen Slaughter again, I think, but this one just did not work for me. I would not discourage you from picking it up, but absolutely do, you know, be aware of that going in. Like, how much violence can you handle? And the final book is a really recent one. It is Sin Eater by Megan Campisi. So this is a historical fiction novel about sin eaters and their role in this medieval town. They were real historical figures at some point. Basically, when a person died, the sin eater would come to the funeral, would eat a piece of food symbolizing each of the sins that someone had committed in their life, and thus kind of imbibe it so the person could continue on to heaven without the weight of their sins. And you are following one girl who is forced to become a sin eater as punishment for a crime that she committed, and basically you just follow her and how ostracized she is from society because they are viewed as dirty, and they're viewed as sinful, obviously, because they've imbued the sins of so many other people. But then you also get this interesting plot that comes in where she is called for the eating at someone's funeral, someone that lived in the palace. When she arrives, she finds that there is a piece of food on the coffin that represents a very controversial sin, I guess, because it's always very hyper-specific. To the sin committed. Like, there's difference between forcing oneself upon a woman and forcing oneself upon a child, for example. So there's a piece of food on the coffin that is very controversial and that no one knows this person had committed, because it would have been considered treason, or at least punishable by some kind of prison time or something at the very least. And so it kind of breaks open this conspiracy that's going on, but ultimately there was just a lot of things that just made me extremely uncomfortable about this that I didn't like. I can't even put into words still, like, it's been a few weeks since I've DNF'd this and I still can't properly put into words what made me feel the way that I did. There was a lot of vomit and a lot of other like gross bodily fluids, but like, okay, fair enough. But then there was also just a lot of secondhand embarrassment moments that I didn't like. And then certain things the book chose to focus on for pages at a time I didn't enjoy. The moment, I literally remember the specific moment I chose to DNF is just when the main character decided to do something and I just was like, this is just kind of taking all these turns, and I just literally closed the book and I went, nope, I'm not interested anymore. I don't care. I feel almost uncomfortable reading this. I just like, I don't know what it is. There's something about this that just like irked me when I was reading it and I can't friggin' do it. It's an extremely short book. I wanted to read and enjoy it and possibly recommend it because I hadn't heard people talk about it, but I kept seeing it at Value Village, and maybe now I know why, because it's kind of not great. I feel absolutely no regret at putting this down. Like some of these I wish I'd liked, I wish I had better feelings towards. This one I'm genuinely okay putting it down and never looking at it again. So there you have it. Those were all of the books that I DNF'd this year. Like I said, if you have finished some of these, let me know what you thought, or let me know what you DNF'd this year, because I am a nosy bitch. Keep your eye out for more Bookmas videos. Also, my social media is linked down below. You guys can come talk to me there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely December and enjoy the holidays, and I will see you very soon. Bye!